She dropped out of Stanford at 19, with 2 semesters of chemical engineering. She wore a black turtleneck every single day. She spoke in a deliberately deep, controlled voice, and she never blinked. Her name was Elizabeth Holmes, and she convinced the most powerful people in America, military generals, former secretaries of state, billionaire investors, Nobel Prize winners, that she had invented the future of medicine. She told them that her device could run over 200 blood tests from a single drop of blood. No needle, no lab, results in minutes, at a fraction of the cost. She told them Theranos was being used by the US military on the battlefield. She said revenue was over $100 million. None of it was true. The device didn't work. The military contract didn't exist. The revenue in the year she claimed $100 million was exactly 100,000. Not million, thousand. And while investors were pouring money in, patients were receiving blood test results that were wrong. Results about cancer, about HIV, about diabetes. Decisions about surgery and chemotherapy based on data from a machine that didn't function. This is the story of Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos in 2003. She was 19 years old. She used the money her parents had saved for her education as seed capital. Her first investor was her Stanford professor, Channing Robertson. He put her in touch with venture capitalists, and by the end of 2004, she had raised $6 million. The idea was genuinely seductive. Blood tests in America were expensive, painful, and slow. You went to a lab, gave several tubes of blood, and waited days for results. Holmes said she could change all of that tests from a single drop of blood, done in minutes, at a fraction of the price. If it worked, it would have been one of the most important medical innovations in decades. It would have made healthcare more accessible, more affordable, and more democratic. The vision was real. The technology was not. The device Holmes built, she called it. The Edison could only reliably run a small number of tests, and even those produced results that were less accurate than conventional machines. For most tests, Theranos was secretly running samples on commercial analyzers made by companies like Siemens, the exact technology Holmes claimed to have made obsolete. She told no one, not the board, not the investors, certainly not the patients. The board, meanwhile, was extraordinary. Holmes had recruited George Shultz, Ronald Reagan's Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, Nixon's Secretary of State, James Mattis, 4-star general, later Secretary of Defense, Betsy DeVos, William Perry, former senators, generals, and diplomats. What the board lacked was scientists, medical professionals, people who understood blood diagnostics and could actually evaluate whether the technology worked. That was not an accident. Holmes cultivated a culture of absolute secrecy inside Theranos. Employees were siloed. The software team didn't know what the hardware team was building. The lab scientists didn't interact with the executives. Anyone who raised concerns was quickly fired or marginalized. By 2014, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. Holmes was worth $4.5 billion, on paper the youngest self-made female billionaire in American history, according to Forbes. Fortune put her on the cover. She was on the cover of Time. She was everywhere. and she never stopped performing. The black turtleneck, every day. The deep voice later alleged to be deliberately affected, not her natural register. The unblinking eye contact. Every detail of her persona was engineered to project certainty. In 2013, Theranos signed a deal with Walgreens, one of the largest pharmacy chains in the United States, to offer its blood tests in stores across the country. Real patients would walk in, give a drop of blood, and receive results. Real patients, real diagnoses, based on a machine that didn't work. The results Theranos produced were wildly inconsistent. Internal studies later revealed in the trial showed that Theranos test results differed from conventional lab results by alarming margins. For some tests, results varied by as much as 40%. A man was told his PSA levels indicated possible prostate cancer. He wasn't sick. A woman received results suggesting she was HIV positive. She wasn't. Patients were told they might have diabetes, heart disease, abnormal hormone levels based on data that was fabricated, or wrong, or both. Doctors received results and made decisions. Prescriptions were written. Follow-up tests were ordered. Some patients, receiving frightening results, experienced severe psychological distress. One patient contemplated suicide after receiving a false HIV diagnosis. Theranos knew. Internal employees flagged the problems repeatedly. Scientists left the company when they realized what was happening. Many signed aggressive non-disclosure agreements that prevented them from speaking publicly. The company had also lied directly to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the federal agency that regulates clinical laboratories. Inspectors who visited Theranos labs found conditions so poor they declared the lab posed, quote, immediate jeopardy to patient health. Immediate jeopardy. The journalist who broke the story was John Carreyrou of the Wall Street Journal. In early 2015, Carreyrou received a tip. A source who had worked at Theranos believed the company's claims were false. Carreyrou began investigating and quickly discovered that no one outside the company could verify its technology. He called scientists. He called former employees. He looked for any independent evidence that the Edison machine worked as described. There was none. Theranos' response was aggressive. Holmes called Rupert Murdoch, who was an investor in Theranos and also owned the Wall Street Journal, and asked him to kill the story. Murdoch declined to interfere. The company's lawyers sent threatening letters. Employees were warned not to speak to journalists. One whistleblower, Tyler Shultz, the grandson of board member George Shultz, was followed by private investigators hired by Theranos. When he tried to file a complaint with regulators, Theranos lawyers were waiting outside the regulator's office. Carreyrou published in October 2015. The story was specific, detailed, and devastating. Holmes went on television the same day. She called the article factually incorrect. She smiled. She said Theranos was going to change the world. She kept smiling. But the FDA and CMS launched investigations. What they found confirmed everything Carreyrou had reported, and worse. Theranos had been using its voided Edison machines on real patients without regulatory approval. Its lab practices were so poor that results couldn't be trusted. In July 2016, Holmes was banned from operating any laboratory for 2 years. Walgreens terminated its deal with Theranos. Safeway, which had invested $350 million in infrastructure, to host Theranos locations, wrote off the investment entirely. In June 2018, a federal grand jury indicted Elizabeth Holmes and Ramesh Balwani, her former partner, both romantically and professionally, on wire fraud and conspiracy charges. Holmes stepped down as CEO. Theranos shut down 3 months later. The trial of Elizabeth Holmes began in August 2021. It lasted 4 months. Former employees testified that they had raised concerns about the accuracy of Theranos tests and been fired or silenced. Scientists described being pressured to approve results they knew were unreliable. Former patients described receiving diagnoses that had upended their lives. Holmes took the stand in her own defense. She denied knowing that the tests were inaccurate. She said she had genuinely believed the technology would work, and she made a claim that shocked the courtroom. She accused Balwani of psychological and sexual abuse throughout their relationship, suggesting that he had controlled her decisions, her beliefs, and her actions at the company. The jury deliberated for nearly 50 hours. On January 3, 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. She was acquitted on the charges relating to defrauding patients. The jury could not reach a verdict on 3 remaining counts. In November 2022, she was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. She was ordered to pay $452 million in restitution to fraud victims. Forbes revised her net worth to 0. She reported to the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas, in May 2023. Balwani was tried separately. He was convicted on all 12 counts and sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison. As of March 2026, the most recent update as this episode was being made, a federal judge reduced Holmes's sentence by 12 months, citing changes to federal sentencing guidelines for first-time, non-violent offenders. She is currently appealing for a further reduction and has asked President Trump to commute her sentence entirely. The Theranos story is often told as a story about ambition, about how Silicon Valley's culture of fake it till you make it went too far. But that framing is too generous. Elizabeth Holmes didn't just mislead investors. She didn't just exaggerate a product's capabilities. She ran fraudulent medical tests on sick people. People who were worried about their health, who trusted the results, who made decisions based on information that was wrong. That's not disruption. That's not innovation. The real lesson of Theranos is that charisma is not evidence. A compelling story is not a product. And the people who told us she was a genius never actually checked. This was Dark Ledger. Subscribe if you want to know where else the money really went.